For decades, Russia has been the primary supplier of natural gas to Europe. In 2021, Russia supplied around 45% of the European Union's total natural gas imports, equivalent to approximately 155 billion cubic meters through various pipelines, including Nord Stream, Yamal Europe, and the Ukrainian pipeline network. Some European countries, such as Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic, have an even higher dependence, with more than 50% of their gas imports coming from Russia. As one of the strongest and most self-sufficient countries, Russia indeed has the world's largest natural gas reserves, which enables it to offer competitive prices compared to other suppliers like Algeria and Norway. This is why European countries prefer Russia as their primary energy supplier. Moreover, the pipeline network connecting Russia and Europe has been built and operated for decades, creating a reliable infrastructure for gas delivery. This is clearly a mutually beneficial relationship for Europe, as they can obtain the world's largest energy source at a lower cost. Meanwhile, for Russia, gas exports to Europe not only generate significant revenue but also serve as a tool to maintain geopolitical influence. This cannot be separated from the Soviet Union's past ambitions to make Europe a hub for giant gas fields in western Siberia. In the 1960s, the Soviets built infrastructure to transport gas to industrial centers in the Western Soviet Union and Western Europe. At that time, natural gas was seen as a cleaner and more efficient fuel compared to coal, which dominated the energy mix in many European countries. The Soviet Union saw an opportunity to export natural gas to Western Europe as a vital source of foreign exchange and a means to increase its political influence in the region. Therefore, the Soviets built a gas pipeline network that crossed Ukraine, which played a crucial role in the energy relationship between Russia and Europe for decades. Initially, the relationship between Russia and Europe in the gas trade ran smoothly, with cheap energy supplies from Russia. European countries, particularly Germany, the UK, and France, were able to build and enjoy industrial prosperity, making them some of the most advanced economies in the world. However, Europe's heavy dependence on Russian gas made it a hostage to energy crises. As is well known, the relationship between Russia and Ukraine over gas transit has often been marked by tension and disputes. Russia has accused Ukraine of stealing gas intended for Europe, while Ukraine has accused Russia of using gas as a political tool to pressure Ukraine. This tension reached its peak in 2006 and 2009, when Russia halted gas flows to Ukraine, affecting supplies to several European countries, particularly in Eastern and Central Europe, which heavily relied on Russian gas transiting through Ukraine. Countries such as Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, and Germany experienced significant declines in gas supplies. But this was only the beginning of the real catastrophe. A more terrifying catastrophe for Europe occurred a few years later. Specifically, in February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. It didn't take long after the invasion. On May 10, 2022, the Ukrainian gas transmission system operator announced the suspension of Russian gas transit through the entry point in Ukraine. This step had a significant impact on the European gas market, exacerbating the ongoing energy crisis and deepening the political tension between Russia and the West. Before the construction of alternative pipelines like Nord Stream 1, most of Russia's gas exports to Europe indeed flowed through the pipeline network in Ukraine. This network, consisting of several major pipelines, has a technical capacity of over 140 billion cubic meters per year. Although Ukraine's share in Russian gas transit has declined with the operation of Nord Stream 1, Ukraine remains a crucial transit route. In 2022 alone, around 40 billion cubic meters of Russian gas, equivalent to about 25% of Russia's total gas exports to Europe, still flowed through Ukraine. This transit role gives Ukraine several benefits. Among them, Ukraine receives transit fees from Gazprom, Russia's state-owned gas company, for every cubic meter of gas that flows through its territory. This is an important source of foreign exchange for Ukraine. Additionally, Its status as a transit country gives Ukraine leverage in its energy relations with Russia and Europe. Ukraine can use its position to pressure Russia in gas price negotiations and other political issues. When Ukraine halted Russian gas flows to Europe through its territory, Europe quickly plunged into a deep crisis. News of the suspension triggered a price surge in Europe. On May 11, 2022, gas prices rose by more than 30%, causing Europe to suffer from this price shock. This reflects market concerns about the potential reduction in gas supplies from Russia to Europe. In response to the reduced gas flows through Ukraine, European countries sought to increase gas imports through alternative routes such as Nord Stream 1 and Yamal Europe, as well as increasing imports of liquefied natural gas, LNG. European countries also began using their gas reserves to compensate for the reduced supplies from Russia. In early May 2022, the EU's gas storage levels were around 35% of capacity, which is lower than the 5-year average for that period. Although using gas reserves can help address short-term supply shortages, it also increases the risk of running out of reserves during the winter, when gas demand peaks. Uncertainty about Russia's future actions, potential further disruptions to Ukraine's gas infrastructure, and limitations of alternative pipelines and LNG all contribute to market uncertainty. These concerns prompted the European Union to accelerate efforts to diversify gas supply sources and reduce dependence on Russia. After experiencing an energy crisis in 2022, the beginning of 2025 marked a significant step in the energy conflict in Europe. Ukraine officially shut down Russian gas flows through its territory to Europe, following a decision not to extend the gas transit contract with Gazprom, Russia's state-owned energy company. This decision was announced by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in December 2024. Zelensky stated that this step is part of efforts to stop Russia from earning billions of euros from energy exports while continuing its aggression against Ukraine. Naturally, this move drew various reactions from European countries. On one hand, Poland hailed it as a new victory against Putin. However, other countries like Slovakia and Hungary warned of potential impacts on energy stability in the region. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico even hinted that the shutdown would not significantly affect Russia's economy but could have severe consequences for the European Union, particularly in the eastern region. As one of the main transit routes for Russian gas for years, Ukraine plays a crucial role in energy distribution in Europe. Thus, when gas flows through Ukraine are halted, several countries like Austria, Slovakia, and Hungary become increasingly vulnerable. These three countries do not have direct access to the sea, making it difficult for them to import gas from other sources. Even Hungary has stated that it still relies on cheap gas from Russia. Despite this, analysis from the European Commission shows that the energy market has prepared itself for this possibility. The European Union, which has been reducing its dependence on Russian gas since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine invasion, has successfully found alternative supply sources, including from Norway, the United States, and North Africa. By the end of 2023, Russia only accounted for around 14% of the EU's total gas imports, significantly lower than Norway's contribution of 30% and the United States' contribution of 19%. However, challenges still exist. The sharp surge in energy prices since 2022 has led several large factories in Europe to reduce production, while many small companies have been forced to shut down. Although energy prices have returned to normal levels, costs remain higher than before the crisis, affecting the competitiveness of industries in Europe, particularly in Germany. In addition, high energy prices have also had a direct impact on households. In 2023, nearly 11% of EU citizens struggled to afford gas to heat their homes during the winter. However, with the increase in global liquefied natural gas, LNG, supplies, the EU is optimistic that it can face the winter without significant energy price increases. In the midst of this dynamic, Hungary and Slovakia are taking different approaches from most European countries. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is trying to find ways to continue receiving Russian gas supplies through Ukraine. According to him, gas that has already passed through Ukraine is no longer considered Russian gas, but rather the property of the buyer, such as Hungary. This statement suggests Hungary's efforts to maintain its energy relationship with Russia, despite the tense geopolitical situation. On the other hand, Slovakia is taking a tougher approach. Prime Minister Robert Fico has even threatened to halt emergency electricity supplies to Ukraine if the situation does not change. In his statement, Fico said that Slovakia must consider its national interests in the midst of this uncertainty. Ultimately, despite the increasingly complex energy challenges in Europe, the diversification steps taken over the past few years offer hope. With the increase in global LNG imports and closer energy cooperation among EU member states, the region hopes to overcome the shock of the halt in Russian gas flows through Ukraine. However, Ukraine's decision shows that energy is not just an economic issue, but also a geopolitical weapon that affects the balance of power in Europe. Amidst all this, the big question is how Europe, Ukraine, and Russia will continue to play their roles on the ever-changing global energy stage.